Hello folks, hello everybody. I hope this video finds you all well. The intent of this video, the topic here is going to be the current war between Russian Federation and Ukraine, and also more importantly, its repercussions and its longer term impact or effects on the overall world strategy, the peace, and particularly from the perspective of the U.S. interests in the Pacific and the current tensions also between Chinese Communist Party, China, and Taiwan. So this is going to be more of a kind of a conversational type of recording. I am planning on also more detailed, more kind of a fact. When I'm saying fact-based, more like utilizing academic type of articles, publications, graphics, and maybe screen sharing, and kind of trying to put the pieces from those kinds of publications. But this is going to be more kind of one-on-one conversational type, in a more informal type of recording. So, as I said, let's start with the kind of briefly the Russian-Ukraine war and its potential position in the overall global strategy. So, and also I'm going to draw similarities or parallels, potential parallels between Ukraine and Russia and China and Taiwan. As we all know, as we are all watching, that the war started in on February 24th of this year, 2022, and today is being August. I'm sorry, I apologize. Today is being April 19th, so in a matter of 5 days, it's going to be 2 months. An active war, all out, large scale, comprehensive war, obviously, needless to say, and is the first time since the end of World War II in Europe there is such a war going on, and a lot of people thinking that Russian Federation, if they become successful, if they succeed of beating Ukraine and invading and occupying Ukraine completely, they may not stop there. They may go into Poland, or they may go into Finland. In fact, both Finland and Sweden applied to become a NATO members, which was actually unbelievable, unpredictable kind of a change. They never showed any interest in becoming a part of NATO, and after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they applied. They applied very rapidly, very seriously, and in fact, they're both planning to be part of NATO as soon as sometime during the summer. Finland is a nation that is sharing about, I think, over 1,000 kilometers of border with Russia, with the Russian Federation. I mean, I think it's easy to understand where they're coming from, as far as feeling insecure about their physical location being a direct neighbor to Russian state. So that is the situation with Russia. Excuse me, I'm gonna just stop here for something. I'm sorry, I'm back. Yeah. So we were talking about Finland and Sweden, and they're becoming a member of NATO state, a NATO establishment. Also, another very interesting and equally unpredictable development that occurred after the Russian invasion is there are two of them. One is Germany increased their national security budget. They added, I think, $100 billion. That was unthinkable. Typically, that was absolutely unthinkable for Germany beefing up their military spending by this degree, $100 billion, all of a sudden. And even another one, in a way, even more unpredictable or more interesting is the fact that Switzerland joined the sanctions, the global sanctions, especially Western sanctions that is being currently applied to the Russian Federation. As everybody knows, Switzerland In fact, there is a even saying, I'm Switzerland. That means I'm neutral. Switzerland is known for her neutrality. And even during the Second World War, Switzerland kept her neutrality. And now they change course and they stop being neutral about this whole incident between Russia and Ukraine, and they join the sanctions, at least, even though they're not participating militarily as far as sending weaponry and stuff. The fact that they joined the sanctions, financial and economic sanctions, and which you all know, Switzerland has a huge weight in the global financial, global economic system. Huge weight in terms of their position, their banking relationships with the international community. They have, although it's a very tiny little country in Europe, they have a big say in this area. So that was another unpredictable and very interesting development. Russia and Ukraine war is absolutely, by all means, one of the major shifts, one of the major turning points in the world history. And a lot of people, we all know, again, we're all aware of the fact that a lot of people are talking, writing about the possibility of Third World War. And is this war somehow an instigator, a trigger, or somehow it is leading towards that direction, towards the Third World War? Is Third World War possible? So all these are basically the social media, also on the academic side, the think tanks. All these establishments are pretty busy with this situation, with whether this war is going to lead to Third World War. My take on that, my understanding, when I'm saying my understanding, I'm seeing a lot of supporting material from the academics, from the think tanks, that we should maybe even stop asking the question, are we going to have a Third World War? Because we're actually in it. We have already started, and it's been going for a while. All the necessary ingredients that would be potentially leading up to Third World War have been in place back to back, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, yes, is a very strong trigger. I would not say trigger, but the expected development of the Third World War scenario. So we are in it now. We are leading to that war. But the main theater of the Third World War is not going to be necessarily confined the area that we're looking at today. Russia, Ukraine, Baltic nations such as Moldavia, Lithuania, Estonia, and then Scandinavian nations such as Finland, Norway, and Sweden, or Russia's potential invasion after Ukraine, if they succeed, going down to Poland, Eastern Europe. The very strong arguments, the very strong simulations, in fact, very serious preparations are being currently conducted, not for the European theater for the Third World War, but for the Pacific theater, which is China. And we do have currently, again, as we all are aware, the Chinese and Taiwanese tensions and the United States inevitable involvement in this situation. So in this case, we got to stop and think about, why is it that China is so keenly interested in Taiwan is one question. And more importantly, why is it that if China attacks Taiwan, that United States would inevitably be pulled into this war, and that war would be actually a very large-scale war in Pacific, and that would be classified, easily called, categorized as Third World War. By all means, very comprehensive, very what is the word, white hot intensity of a war. So, first let's start with, first off, what is the significance of Taiwan for China, for the United States, for the global system, and then we can go from there. So let's start a little bit about Taiwan. So Taiwan is an island nation, independent nation. It's not part of China, obviously, and the people, the Taiwanese people, are ethnically mostly Chinese or related to China, the mainland. Yet they're not part of China. They don't see themselves as part of China. They see themselves as a separate, sovereign, independent nation, just like Ukraine, as a Taiwanese nation, Taiwanese people. They don't want to be part of Chinese establishment. Very similar to Ukrainian situation. Ukrainian people, there is a lot of ethnic relationships between Ukrainians and Russians, yet Ukrainians are saying we are a sovereign nation, we're Ukrainians, we're Ukraine, we are not part of the Russian Federation. Very similar situation. But why is it that Taiwan is so important? Because first off, the Taiwan has what is the extremely overwhelming majority of the resources that matters hugely a lot for the digital technology, for the computers, computer systems, for the digital age in overall in general. That is semiconductors. Their production is like oil to the world for energy purposes. That's what semiconductors are for the computer systems. That means for the digital world. That means no one can ever get by without. Just like life is not possible without energy, without power, without electricity, without oil anymore. I guess anyone could easily say life is not possible without the conveniences of computer systems, internet, in anything you can possibly think. I don't need to even mention those. Everybody knows those things. So, semiconductor industry is huge. And also, along with that, the strategic location and importance of Taiwan is for China. If China can control Taiwan, then China can have a huge leverage as far as controlling Japan and Korea. So there is a lot of interest from the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and lots of preps and work has been going on as far as analyzing the pros and cons of attacking Taiwan and occupying it. Now, what is the position of the United States in this? First off, United States openly, actually during Biden administration, Biden said it more than one time in extremely explicit terms to Taiwanese people, to Taiwanese government, that in case of a Chinese attack on Taiwan, United States will absolutely defend Taiwan. This is reflecting how important Taiwan is for the United States. It is not possible for the power like US in the global system, if you consider all the ins and outs of dynamics of the global system and the position of the United States in this system, given the control of country like Taiwan with the resources I just mentioned to China, in a way, rogue nation almost, would be unthinkable, would certainly be unthinkable. So, yes, the United States will not sit idle when Chinese is invading and controlling Taiwan. This will not happen. If Chinese attack Taiwan, United States will, with all certainty, with 100% certainty, will be in the Pacific fighting all-out war with China. Unless all the diplomatic options are exhausted, everything eventually led to the physical, comprehensive, global kind of war, then yes, United States will be involved in that. According to my studies and readings on this matter, which I will not go into those details in this particular recording, that U.S. Pentagon has been basically prepping for an all-out war with Chinese in the Pacific for sometime in the mid-2030s. Sometime in mid-2030s, like 2034, 2035, something like that. So we're talking about a, give and take 12, 13 plus years of prep time in case all the balances, diplomatic, political, economic, whatever you, lead up to that kind of situation, that the war is inevitable, that Pentagon has been preparing for that war. Now, in this case, the question is, what I'm trying to say is we should not consider that Third World War is a remote possibility. In fact, it's impossible. It will or may not or will not happen, because if that happens, the whole world, the whole globe, will blow up. Will just go down in the drains and smoke, and everybody will be vanished off the face of the planet because of nuclear, powers and all that. So therefore, there is some kind of power balance, and because of that, what is it called? The power, the balance of terror, the balance of fear. Like if like Soviet, in the past Soviet Union, now Russian Federation and the United States, have been always on this kind of nuclear balance to be able to establish this nuclear deterrence. Deterrence based on what? The fear that both sides would know that, if I start this, okay, the other side will start, and then it's going to be end of the world. So this situation, the nuclear deterrence of the Cold War time, after the Second World War, the 45-year Cold War with Soviet Union, end of Soviet Union came in 1991. You remember the Berlin Wall in Germany came down in 1989. In 1991 was the collapse of Soviet Union. And after that, today's Russian Federation, we're still saying about 8,000, give and take, 8,000 nuclear missiles with nuclear warheads, and the United States comparable number. Overall, I think in the world we have 16,000 or 16,000 overall the missiles with nuclear warheads. Just a very quick, just a kind of quick comparison. And if you think of, what happened at the end of the Second World War in Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, a number of people got killed with the atomic bomb dropped by the Americans, that basically sealed the Japanese stance in the war. World War II killed about 100,000 people. Today's nuclear capacity, the overall destruction capacity is, I don't know the exact number. I mean, I studied those numbers and compared the different types of bombs, atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, and all those. But if you put everything, the entire nuclear capabilities, and then compare to that time, it is measured in, hundreds of times more, maybe thousands of times more, as far as overall destructive capability. So yes, it does make obviously sense to have this kind of a balance based on fear and deterrence. Nevertheless, again I repeat, it is not impossible. In fact, it is very highly possible to get into all-out physical comprehensive Third World War. So now let's look at this. let's look at the situation as a war between the United States or overall West NATO countries, NATO power, versus Chinese. I want to just mention a couple variables in this equation. Chinese, you remember, I mean, China population is almost 1.5 billion people, the most populous nation in the world. And do you know what is their major issue currently? The major Chinese problem. It is feeding its people. It is extremely difficult to feed 1.5 billion people every day, 3 times a day. It is very difficult. You probably know that Chinese people eat anything. Anything moving, flying, anything. Cats, dogs, mice, rats, bats, what have you. Why? Not because they're particularly, it's not like their special diet to eat dogs and eat some bats and rats. It's because they're hungry. Right now, even with all the economic development that made Chinese currently the second largest economy in the world since the economic reforms since 1975 to 1980, although it kind of eliminated a lot of poverty in China and pulled hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, still out of 1.5 billion people, easily over 1 billion people are still extremely poor, and so many of them are actually near starvation situation. This is a real problem in China. Did you also know that 50 million tons of wheat China imports every year, annually? 50 million tons of wheat. Guess from where? From the United States of America. If a war starts, just one thing, and I'll give you a couple examples like that. And of course, obviously, the war scenarios and simulations have lots of variables, but I'm just mentioning these two for the sake of conversation. If the United States stops sending 50 million tons of wheat, you just come up with a number. Your number would be as good as my number. I don't know. 500 million people starving to death or starving severely? Likely, yes? Yeah, I think so. I would say so. So, that's one thing. The other one is the Chinese energy needs. China is basically, because of their rapid development, and as I mentioned before, since the economic reformation started in middle to late 70s, so about, give and take, 45 years, especially the last 25 years. If you look at the Chinese economic development, they've been growing at incredible clip, at incredible pace. Double-digit growth they've been basically registering every year, over 10%, over 11, even over 12%. That's how they become the world's second largest economy in a matter of 35, 40 years. And challenger economy. A lot of people use that word. China, challenger nation, challenger economy. So, given with this kind of growth, you can imagine their growth also, the demand growth in energy. And because of this demand, China has been going crazy, has been making deals with Iran, Middle East nations. They're going and doing lots of investments in Africa for natural resources, and they're extremely busy with that. And their energy needs, the growing energy needs, it's growing exponentially every year, exponentially, because of the developments that China needs to secure her position in the world as challenger nation and eventually defeat America and become the superpower, That's what they're basically points for. They want to become a superpower, and they are basically poised to defeat American hegemony and American status in the world, and they want to rule this globe. This is how Chinese is seen, and this is what their target is. So, having said that, and given this scenario, their energy needs are growing exponentially, I said, but they don't produce their own oil. So basically, they're the net. China is the net oil importer nation. And where do you think oil? How do you think they're physically, logistically getting oil? The oil goes to China through ocean. For instance, from the Middle East, the tankers are starting from there and then going through the South Pacific, Indian Ocean, and in Chinese section of the Pacific, and eventually stop China and deliver there, unload the oil. So, who do you think controls the world's oceans? The entire oceans is controlled by the United States on this globe. There is nothing moves on the ocean, any ocean, without the acknowledgement of the U.S. military. Well, if they stop oil deliveries to China, they're out of energy. So, two things. That's why I mentioned those two things. One is the wheat, 50 million tons of wheat imported from the United States, starvation, once there is a blockage and sanctions. Second sanctions is if the U.S. blocks the oil delivery, again, Chinese is out of energy. So, I just want to leave that here as far as the war situations, war simulations, and who would be the potential winner, whatever. But I just want to kind of mention those two things, because I think it was very relevant and interesting facts. So, coming back to now, again, Taiwan issue, and again, for the stated facts, like, the Taiwan situation here and the Taiwanese, the significance of Taiwanese economy and the resources in Taiwan, such as the semiconductors and all that, it is needless to say that is extremely significantly important to make sure that China does not have any kind of control over Taiwan. When we're looking at again, going back to, because I want to go back and forth between the China and Taiwan situation and making references to the current Russian and Ukraine war. And one other thing is currently, let me put it this way, the war, and we all are seeing how Russian military is doing. The latest very significant development was they lost their flagship Moskva battleship in Black Sea. Right now, this flagship battleship is in the bottom of Black Sea. This was a huge blow to the Russian Navy and an incredibly big embarrassment. And also, I think anyone who's interested in have been following that, right now it's a matter of, it's going to be, like I said, 2 months in the next 5 days. Less than 2 months, Russian military already lost 20,000 soldiers. That is number of deaths. But if you look at the number of wounded soldiers and also deserted soldiers and all that, over 50,000 easily are out of war, out of commission. While Russian Federation deployed 250,000 soldiers for the complete and comprehensive invasion of Ukraine. 250,000 soldiers. And 1/5 of this force already is totally and entirely out of commission within less than 2 months of this war. According to some resources and simulations, serious studies and simulations, Pentagon thinks or says this war will continue somewhere between 1 year and 3 years. And this is the situation in the first 2 months. We all know that. I think we can comfortably say that. Putin is not going to stop. Is not going to give up on what he started. And he will go all out. This will, the current going of the war is very much in the favor of Ukraine, and not only in Ukraine, but in the favor of the overall U.S. approach and NATO interests, let's say. It is pretty supportive, pretty positive from the West perspective, from the NATO perspective, from the U.S. perspective, the way that the war is going, and Ukrainians have been very bravely and successfully defending their nation, and every day they're basically reducing the capabilities and seriously inflicting the capabilities of the Russian military machine. And other facts that came out also about the Russian military establishment, that for instance, just one example, everybody's knowledge again that Russians have lots of tanks. I don't know the number. Was it 10,000 or 15,000, something like that? Incredible amount of tanks. But so many of them, a huge percentage of them, are from the Soviet era of technology. It hasn't been any kind of upgrades or improvements since then. In fact, so many, again, important percentage of it is literally not war ready, not in operable condition, not operable, and those operable are not upgraded. And more importantly, there's a major tank production facilities in Russia. People with knowledge and skills, engineers, who manufacture those tanks prior to the Second World War and during that time. Those guys are now, they were trained in that time, during that time frame. They were young kids then. They were like 18-year-old, 20-year-old students, engineering students. Now they're like 60s and 70s, and they're either retiring or retired actually, or older ones are dying. There is no new ones coming up to replace them. Russia has a huge, serious problem with their overall technology, scientific and technology education. They're not producing the weapons that they used to produce. Yes, they produce like systems like S-300s, S-400s, some very capable Su jet fighters, some very capable air missile capabilities in systems, but they're not really keeping up with the upgrades, with the improvements to catch up with the West, with NATO systems. That's one other fact about the Russian military. They need huge upgrades, which would be, we're talking about tens of, maybe hundreds, not tens, hundreds of billions of dollars of improvements for the Russian military. Well, we all know the current economic impact of the war on Russian economy through sanctions, and basically 90%, I would say almost comprehensively, all the Russian financial system is barred from the SWIFT operations. Without the SWIFT operations, no Russian financial institution, no Russian bank can ever interact with the international community, international financial and economic systems. They cannot have exchanges with any other bank in the world. There is only one company left, one bank actually left out of this SWIFT sanctions, that is Gazprom, because Gazprom Bank is obviously, as the name says, belongs to Gazprom company, which is the very major company in Russia, coordinating and managing all the natural gas sales to Europe. So they left SWIFT available for Gazprom Bank, just so Europe would not have an immediate suffering because the lack of natural gas. Otherwise, they'll be freezing to death. But in the meantime, for long-term solutions, they're trying to. United States, there's been a lot of talks that the U.S. has been trying to give assistance and find alternatives to Europe's dependence on the Russian oil, mostly Russian natural gas. So that is also another condition. Overall, Russian economy, according to a lot of, I think that there is a consensus on that. After the war, whenever the war is over, it'll be over at some point, maybe next year sometime, maybe a couple of years, I don't know, but it'll be over, right? Neither Ukrainian economy nor the Russian economy, I believe most likely, or more seriously, the Russian economy will not be able to get back to former self. That's prior to war situation. One example I want to give you is Putin raised $645 billion before starting the war, knowing that he was going to need that money to conduct the war. But what happened was, out of $645 billion, I think about $450 billion of it is now blocked by the West. So that only leaves how much? About, let's say, give and take, $190 billion for Putin's use. Russian oligarchs money, they have $250 billion basically, in Swiss account, in Switzerland, in Swiss banks. But again, the same thing, the West blocked that money, all that $250 billion. So many oligarchs escaped from Russia to different countries. So many of them are in London, so many of them are in Turkey, so many of them are going to Dubai, those kind of places. By the way, if you're interested, the cost of the daily cost of this war that is costing to Russia? Conducting this war on a daily basis, it is costing, give and take, $20 billion to Russians. And that is for now. That might go up. The daily cost of conducting the business of war, might be even more expensive going forward. Currently $20 billion. And it's been going for 2 months. And it's going to be 2 months. So you imagine that, 60 times 20. We were talking about $180 billion, right? Yeah. And we already mentioned that $645 billion that he raised and set aside, $450 billion of it is blocked. He is really, going through that money. He is really squandering that money. So, then what? Okay, the war is going to end up. The war is going to finish some point. We don't know. Maybe, looks like they're not going to be, to me, obviously it's hard to say, but they're not very successful. They're not being able to achieve their objectives, because what was the objective? To occupy the entire Ukraine, to occupy Kiev, the capital, in a matter of 48 hours. 48 hours, we're talking about 2 months, and they're already expelled. At the best, maybe they can have a control over some pockets of eastern Ukraine. That's it. The other possibility, obviously, is the overall success of invading and occupying Ukraine, and then we're talking about a different situation. So, that's Russia. Now, the Chinese has been watching this extremely closely and carefully, and asking the question themselves. NATO basically solidified after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. NATO, which has not been ever this solid so far in the history of NATO, became one like this after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In fact, I mentioned that Sweden and Finland applying for NATO has been extremely unpredictable. And Switzerland even participated in the sanctions. They're taking side, giving up her neutrality is incredible. And also Germany's $100 billion additional funds for their national defense systems. All that indicates one thing to China. Wow, Russia started war, NATO became very serious. They mean goddamn business. And they became one under the American leadership of NATO is a very serious threat. Now, if I do the same thing to Taiwan, I have every reason to say and believe, folks, every reason, Chinese will think not twice or 3 or 4 times, but Chinese will consider this, all these options, all these scenarios, all these simulations, million times before they decide on action of attacking Taiwan. Because if these sanctions are applied, the similar sanctions that are being applied to Russia today, if they're applied to China, that's why I give you those 2 examples. One was food, one was energy. They will starve to death, they will freeze to death, all that. They will be in serious, deep shit. That's what I'm trying to say. But nevertheless, China is very serious about their Taiwanese issue. And no matter what, they might, and I would not be, let me put it this way, surprised. Even given all these, constraints, they might end up attacking Taiwan. Therefore, then we're talking about a huge war. I don't know what you call it. You might not call it Third World War. You might call it as the beginning of Third World War. Whatever your views are, my view is it is going to be very, very major, comprehensive war. And I think whatever the criteria and standards of classifying a war of that scale, whether it's a world war or not, you can bring academic discussions about that. I'm going to call it Third World War. Am I saying, do I mean overall global end of humanity because of nuclear situation? No, that's not what I'm feeling. That's not what I'm thinking. In my opinion, that is not the way it has been always depicted. That the Third World War, once that happens, the humanity is over, civilization is gone as we know it. That's not how I look at it. That's not how I see it. But yes, a completely new age will start. A new world order will start. And my take on that one, there will not be any room or space in this new world for China. Yes, it'll be there, of course. It's a huge nation. It's been there for 5,000 plus years and 5.1 million people, a billion people. It'll be there. But nothing like what they've been dreaming. Nothing like what they've been dreaming. Most of them will be probably confined back to their those rice fields, rice paddies. They're bending over knee-high water, rice paddies. Yeah. Basically toiling the soil. They'll be back to that age. Not far from their huge ego and ambitions of being a global superpower, right? Obviously, initially, the war will cripple seriously U.S. Resources, but the time will help to heal. In the new age, new world war, the new world order, that famous word, right? That infamous statement, NWO, the new world order, will be for real, for sure, and for good. So that is basically what I wanted to mention about the Chinese situation, the Chinese Taiwanese situation, and its comparisons to the Russian situation. We mentioned about. I just basically want to kind of wrap it up with the why Taiwan is important, and from the Taiwanese resources, from the Chinese perspective, and also from the American perspective. So that is pretty much, I believe, as far as this recording goes. Like I mentioned at the beginning, and it wasn't going to be any kind of in which I will do more comprehensive based on using the reports from various think tank organizations, from or various strategists and experts and people who are really dedicating their lives to these matters and their reports, and kind of coming up with out of those some kind of a summary, so to speak, that would help me to understand and communicate the way I see this, the way I understand what's going on, and come up with another recording. So any one of you who been kind enough to be here and listening to my video, thank you very much. And like I said, look for other videos of mine, and please, if you can, before you leave, click on that like button, so I can increase my presence in YouTube area, YouTube, and kind of keep coming up with more videos. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Take care.